Hey guys, Spanners here. I'm joined in the shed by Kyle today, and we're going to be talking to Mike Caulfield, who has been at the very heart of F1 strategy. He was a strategist at Mercedes, and he was the head of strategy over at Haas as well. So we're going to be looking forward to the Monaco Grand Prix. What can we expect from these new tyre regulation changes? And is there anything that can be done to save it? But to be fair, there have been some memorable moments at the Monaco Grand Prix, and me and Kyle are going to talk through some of those as well. Kyle joins me now. Hello, Kyle.
Hello, how's it going?
I'm all right. How do you feel?
To be on the main one.
It's weird to be on the main one because you've been the MotoGP host of late. It's been a mission, and that mission has been rewarded because you guys have just passed your first episode with 1,000 downloads. 1,000 downloads in the podcast space is massive. It puts you in like the top something percent, and you should be incredibly proud.
That's unreal. I'm really, really happy about it. It was a bit of a shock. I can't believe people listen to us. I guess you went through this right at the start.
Yeah.
I can't believe people listen to us. And I try to always precursor like the show. I was just like, we pretend to be experts. We're just like people talking. We're just punters talking. But people seem to listen to us talking and they come back, which is nice. I don't know whether they're obviously in my head because I have imposter syndrome. I think there's 1,000 people sharing it saying, look how stupid these
look
guys
at these
are.
idiots. Yeah. I said that with the Miami thing because we get quite a lot of online feedback and a bit of grief online. And I actually want to talk a little bit about that towards the end of the show because there was some specific stuff with Jack Doohan and Colapinto and Yuki Tsunoda. And the F1 space now seems to be trying to push back against it and really kind of address it. So I worry when I do these live events in Miami, I go, hang on, are the people that have registered to turn up, are these just the same people that have been having a go at me online? Did they get a ticket just to call me a turnip?
Turning up just to criticize you or to put the knives in. Yeah.
Why would they come to our gig just to boo us? But yeah, well done with MotoGP, and people who are into MotoGP should definitely check that out. There will be links in that show notes, in the show notes below. We're into our pre-Monaco week. Now, I haven't always been the most positive person about the Monaco Grand Prix. We tend to disagree with things like this. So I'm going to guess that you would defend the Monaco GP a little bit.
It is what it is, and it's there, and it's not going anywhere. You may as well embrace it and try to enjoy it in whichever way you can. Like, the one thing I do like about Monaco is it's tense. It takes a tiny lapse of concentration on a mistake, and somebody's in the wall, a safety car, and it can change it all. And I'm really looking forward to this one in particular because I'm actually a huge fan of the enforced rule that they've put in. I usually hate stuff like this, but for Monaco, I think it makes perfect sense.
Okay, why don't you give us a summary of what the new rules are?
Well, they're basically going to enforce 2 stops, and they're enforcing 2 stops by saying you have to use 3 sets of tyres. So that's essentially guarantee you have to do 2 stops because you're using 3 sets of tyres, and the same 2 compound rules apply. So if you kind of look into this, I mean, we'll talk about it more later, but I think that opens up some really interesting strategy permeations because there's permutations even. So because I think this is unprecedented. We've never really seen this before, and it actually harps and likens it to like a very big sort of oddly, people are going to hate me saying this, but an indoor karting event that is a race in the BRKC where there's an enforced pit stop, but the strategy varies, and it's very hard to overtake, and the strategy varies are fantastic. And those races are genuinely, well, you've commentated, you've been there, you've been you've been a bit, and some of those races are genuinely exciting because there's a myriad of different options you can do, and this is Formula One's got it for the first time, and I think this is actually fascinating. So I for one cannot wait, and for that reason, I'm going to defend Monaco today.
Well, I'll defend the fact that they're doing something because we've been talking about it for years, and there's almost been this. Okay, there's been a lack of willingness to admit that it's not a good race, and in fact, the race doesn't ever get going. And we'll hear when we talk to Matt here, to Mike here, just the extent to which the teams can go very slow. So the whole thing about it is, but the challenge, they're so close to the walls. They're doing this, but in the race, not really. We are going to talk about the 1996 Monaco Grand Prix as well. And I rewatched that after Kyle pointed out that as one of the candidates for Monaco Magic Moments. I went back and watched bits of the 1996 Monaco Grand Prix and go, ooh, they don't race like that anymore. Uh, so the recent races have just been these really slow processions where you can deliberately go as slow as you want, and no one can overtake you. Often, even in wet conditions. And I felt for a long time that no one was admitting that, and so by making this rule change and making a special set of rules for Monaco that doesn't apply elsewhere, at least for me, in my fan heart, that is an admission that it doesn't work in modern Formula One. And that might seem like a really small thing, but for the longest time, I felt like I was being gaslit. And I was saying, nothing happens. It's a dull Grand Prix. This is terrible. And people going, oh, no, 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 no. It's actually a magnificent jewel in the crown. The fact that they've finally gone, okay, we admit there's a problem. That's the first stage. When you admit there's a problem, then you can do something about it. So from that point of view, I am a fan, Kyle. I'm not complaining that they've done something. In fact, two things. We've got the new softer tyre, which was used at Imola, which is also going to be used here. And they have to do 2 stops, and they have to use 3 different sets of tyres, but not 3 different compounds. Is that right?
Yes, not 3 different compounds, 3 different sets across the 2 compounds. So it'll be great. Well, actually, I think it would be worse if they say you have to use 3 compounds. It gives variation, so there might be different angles of going about it. Using 3 compounds would have been too prescriptive. So it's prescriptive, but open to interpretation or open to other strategies. So I actually think they've got this just about right. But we'll see. They're probably going to prove us wrong. It probably will be an endurance economy run. And going about talking about people going really slowly, 2013, I think, was the epitome, wasn't it? With the super soft tires, and they're going like 4 or 5 seconds a lap slower
Oh.
just to get it to the one stop.
Okay,
And
so
that was
yeah,
dreadful.
Mike is in this interview I'm about to play specifically talks about that. And actually, do you know what, Cole? When these things come up, I'm amazed how much I can remember. So,
Yeah.
it was something, it was like the 2016 Daniel Ricciardo thing. And when his tyres weren't ready, I was chatting to Mike and I was like, oh my God, I remember what tyres Mercedes were on. How do I remember that they were on the ultra soft and Red Bull were on the soft? So I'm going to play that out. Notepads and pens at the ready. We'll have a chat about the Mike Caulfield interview after that finishes, and we'll talk about some Monaco moments. And we're going to put our necks on the line, and we're going to make some predictions for the Monaco Grand Prix. Hello, Spanners and Kyle from the past. I hope you guys are having a lovely evening, but I'm here in the afternoon and just swanning around talking to friends in and around Formula One because I don't have a real job. And my friend today is somebody who has been a strategist at the very highest level in motorsport. It's Mike Caulfield. Hello, Mike.
Hey, mate. How's it going?
Yeah, it's all right. I'm getting to chat to you, so it's fun. You said to me, any show we do should be called How to Lose the Monaco Grand Prix. And I got the vibe that you might not be the Monaco Grand Prix's biggest fan in the world.
Yeah, you could say that. I think basically in the F1 world, I've found that you fall into 2 camps with Monaco. You either love it or you hate it. As a strategist, I've tended to hate it more often than not, I think. So it's not just even about the racing, the actual just the whole event kind of always used to grate on me. So it's one of those ones I'm actually not too. There's some events where I really wish I was still there, and then there's some events where I'm really glad I'm at home, and this is one where I'm really glad I'm at home.
Well, I've got to pull on that thread first. Then I'm assuming that a lot of it is around, the fuss. I guess there's a lot of celebrities around. Is the vibe of the teams different then when you go to Monaco?
Yes and no. I mean, it's obviously it's in the middle of it's a very cramped and close environment. They're like the pit lane's totally open, so the garages are totally open. You're not got your kind of nice paddock where you can
Hide.
separate yourself off, and it's always busy. I think the one thing from my side is that the offices here are above the garages here, so you have racing all weekend. You've just got constant like noise just battering you all the time. It's hot often because you're in these kind of prefab buildings. It's just not a nice environment. Your normal races, you kind of hop off the kind of garage, you can wander across to your hospitality, get a drink, get away with it. The paddock in Monaco is down by the harbour, so it's a 10-15 minute walk from your office. So you can't have that kind of little luxury. If there's a session going on, you basically can't walk through because obviously it's an active pit lane, and it's just hectic.
Oh, Mike, I'm sorry. Does it take too long to get to hospitality? Does it, Mike?
Yes, it does.
No. I mean, the thing about being above the pit lane. I'll start by asking your take on the Daniel Ricciardo situation a while back, where he was on softs, I think, and then Mercedes went on. Oh gosh, this is taking me back. Went on to hyper softs or ultra softs, whichever one was the bigger.
So it was it's basically I was at that race, so that was 2016. Yeah, so it started wet, so everyone started on X wet tires. It dried. Some people went to inters. We with Mercedes with Lewis stayed on X wets because you can't overtake, so it doesn't matter if you drive around for 5 seconds.
So you stayed out.
Yeah. So Red Bull obviously went. Red Bull put Ricardo onto inters, which dropped him behind Lewis, but obviously on a much quicker tire because the Inter was the faster tire, but there was no way of being overtaken. And then yeah, they went for the pit stop. So we pitted Lewis first, still on that kind of transitional period. So he's still on the Inter tire, which quicker than the slicks at that point. But then they came into to obviously pit Danny Rick onto the slick tires. We'd already pit. We were on the slow warm up lap, so technically he had the gap because the Inter was still the quicker tire, so he'd made up that bit. But then they didn't have. I don't know if they had any tires ready or if there was one corner missing. And yeah, so I don't know if your viewers know, but basically at Monaco, you've got a 3-story pit building. All your tires and everything are kept in there, but basically your tires are stored on the actual start finish side, opposite side to the pit lane, under some trees, basically.
Right.
And it is literally in a tent under some trees. And if you kind of haven't got, there isn't space in the garages to do the normal layout where you've got your racks and everything, especially in that kind of situation where you've got inters, wets, slicks on. In a normal race, yeah, you've got your next set laid out, but in this one where it was a bit changeable conditions, they just obviously weren't. So it wasn't just a case of, oh, we've got the wrong set, quickly grab it out of the garage. They literally had to run through the garage under some trees to pull the tire sets out, basically. And even then, he only just came out behind Lewis, so it just showed that like what the actual performance, they should have won that race easily. So yeah, it ties in with the name of How to Lose Monaco Grand Prix.
That was so heartbreaking because he was just sat there. It feels like forever. But knowing what you're saying, I didn't realize it was on 3 levels. I knew they had to go out the back, but they actually did really well to get it that quickly. Even
yeah. So I mean, I don't know the exact layout or how Red Bull had it, but yeah, it was very much the case of I think they weren't readily available and they had to kind of quickly spin it around, or they'd brought the wrong set out or something. But yeah,
from my memory of it, and we're going back nearly 9 years now, I think that they were originally going to go onto the softs, which at that time was the 3rd softest tire available. I think you had like ultra soft and hyper soft. So I think because you guys had gone to the very softest one, they suddenly went, oh, maybe Mercedes knows something we don't know.
Something like that. Yeah, there's potential. Yeah, and always these cases again when you're in the drying conditions, obviously a softer tire
heats up
does help. But I also remember at that point the Hypersoft or Ultrasoft camera, which one it was also graining quite significantly. So actually in a normal dry race, you didn't want to use the softest tire, but maybe in these conditions they had a change of mind when they saw us fit it to put that on.
There you go. So you did that. You specifically caused that Daniel Ricciardo heartbreak.
I'll take it. Yeah.
Nice one, mate. Nice one, Mike. Made Danny Rick cry. Yeah. So you're describing though quite an exciting strategic scenario. Whereas so why don't you love it? That was a time for you to shine.
Because I've also had the experience at the other end where you fit under a safety car and come out P12 or something when you're running P5, and then with the beauty of Monaco is you then just can use one of your drivers just to back everyone else up, and you get stuck behind a car, and it's obviously not this weekend, but at that point you one pit stop and done, and there's nothing else you can do about it, and it's an awful feeling.
How often does that happen then, that the second driver or one driver gets deployed to just block?
It has done quite recently in the past, and I think with the 2 stops this weekend, I can see it possibly being a real strategy this weekend of trying to create gaps for teammates and stuff. Like some teams, obviously, if they've got equal drivers or the teams, it'll be more difficult to do. But if you have a situation not going to name any names, Red Bull, where you've got a split in the cars, and you've got someone pitting early who's a competitor, and you've got a car which is back in P9, P10, and one car's up in P2. You're going to force that driver back to get your other car a free pit stop. And
it could happen.
It's actually one I'm really looking forward to this week, and it could be really interesting to see what teams do in terms of tactics in that sense.
Right. Okay. Firstly, I want to say about the pitting under safety car. So with one stop, yeah, we've had it a few times where you go, oh, safety car, that'll spice things up, but it doesn't. It just takes away any variation that the pit stop could have thrown up. So yeah, we've had some really. So I've been going on this kind of not quest, but just going. Can we just admit that it's not entertaining to watch? Because for ages, everyone around F1 was like, "No, it's the jewel in the crown. It's exciting." You're watching it wrong. If anything, you're watching it wrong. Look how close they get to the barriers. But like during the race, they're not really. They're not pushing. Have you spoken to the drivers about how it feels on a Sunday? Like, are they literally bored, or do they find some excitement in it?
There's definitely experience as well. So I think Merck in 2013, when we won with, that would have been the Nico one, wouldn't it? I think. Yes, yeah, won with Nico in 2013, where they didn't have the fastest car by a mile at Monaco, but managed to qualify on pole.
Yeah,
and literally just
parked
drove
the bus
so slow, and it was like no one was trying it. It was just dull.
Vettel called it the silver bus up ahead.
It's something like that, yeah. But that was it, yeah. And then I think there's obviously a few years ago, can't remember. Again, it could have been Danny Rick. He had the MGUH or MGK issue, and he was driving like 5-6 seconds off the pace, but still you can't do anything about it. So, and then in the situation when I messed up with Kevin, it was Lando there was backing up. I can't remember who his teammate was at the time, but Lando was the second car, and he basically just backed everyone up to create a free stop. And then because he was been driving really slowly, he had a load of tires left. So then once his teammate had made a stop, he then just sped off, and everyone else had destroyed the tires because they'd stopped early. And
Remind me how you messed up for Kevin Magnussen.
So basically, we were P5, and then there was a safety car came out on lap 9 or something. And by this point, we were P5 or P6, and I think we were stuck behind the Renault, and the Renault was driving slow because they were managing the tires. They were driving so slow, and the top 4 had actually pulled away, like almost by a pit stop within the first 8 laps because the Renault was driving so slow. And we made the call to pit on lap 9 when we should have stayed out under the safety car, because normally the instant reaction safety car you should pit under it, but it actually meant we dropped out behind a couple of cars who'd started on the opposite tire, the hard or whatever it was at the time. So they were slow and they weren't stopping. And then we didn't forecast the scenario where you had a couple of cars then creating a gap. So basically, he dropped out in about P12, P13, and just went backwards and backwards. And it was and we never gained anything back from it. And it was just one of those ones where you kind of watched it, and I was in two minds to stop beforehand, and I called it, and it's just one of those things. But it's gutting when you see where you're going to come out and you see who's ahead of you, and you're going, we're done here. That's it. There's nothing we can do about it.
But you can't. If you could have paused time and had longer to think about it, would you have made that same choice? Is it one of those snap decisions?
There was a few things about it. Like, so we'd had a discussion pre-race about it, and like going into it right up until about an hour before the race, I was always basically safety car window opens lap 15, 16.
Oh, so this is before the safety car window.
Yeah, this was in my mind. And then an hour before the race, I'd had a chat with someone who was basically saying, "Well, no, we're probably going to come in from lap 6." And it just clouded my thinking. And I was like, "Why are they thinking that?
May I ask?
Am I missing something?"
Different team.
Different team.
Oh, yes. Is that in like the strategist WhatsApp group?
No, but it was a different team, but not a competitor. So like it wasn't like they were hiding anything from me or like trying to and then it clouded my thinking, and I just should have, as usual, as I know, like 99 times out of 100, I stick with my gut, and this time I didn't, and it kind of that's what happened, and it's just awful feeling. Like it's honestly the worst feeling I've ever had. Like,
Oh, they would have been parties. You'd have been in the pool probably. Oh my goodness. Let's not dwell on that. Let's not
yeah,
dwell on that
exactly.
too
Yeah.
much. I'm just surprised, really. I know speaking to the NASCAR guys, like all the Toyota strategists will talk together. I didn't know whether that kind of happens or how much collusion there is between, say, the Mercedes power unit guys, where you kind of are naturally in a club where you're more friendly with them than, say, the Ferrari stable.
Yeah, I mean, all the strategists know each other, and the worst thing is like you also know which drivers talk to each other, and the certain drivers will tell each other what's their strategy they're doing.
Oh.
So then you'll suddenly get like come back from the drivers' parade, and you have your driver wandering up to this going, Sebastian says it's a two-stop. No.
You go, oh no, why are you talking to Seb? Oh yeah, well I suppose
Yeah.
they're countrymen. If you got right, you've given away who we're talking about here. Since we're talking about Rosberg, I just want to go back to that 2013 one. Did you specifically say to them like just because that year you were chewing tires, weren't you, in that Mercedes?
Yes.
Yeah, so you were qualifying really well, like sometimes
Yeah.
by a second, and
Yeah.
then no tires in the race. So did you say to them like just literally park it, go as slow as you possibly can, don't fight each
Yeah,
other?
we're literally so like I mean we were obviously doing a lot of work by that point to try and figure out what was going on, and at the telemetry coming off the car, we literally had a number which said this is how much energy we're putting through the tire, and we put a limit on it saying, okay, we don't want to go above 1200, and so we were just driving it to that, and that was even we programmed it to be on their steering wheel to hit this, so they were driving to this kind of number, which is
That's interesting. I was obviously a big Hamilton fan, and I was excited about this move to Mercedes that everyone said would be a disaster, and then this tire thing just kept happening, and it was haunting me. I literally dreamt about it, and I dreamt that my wife came up and looked at it because she's just got this habit of like solving a problem that I've been dwelling on for ages. So she came along and she went, "Oh yeah, no, their ride height's wrong." And I woke up going, "Oh, so simple. What if it is that?" Did you? What was it that was chewing the Mercedes tires in 2013?
I mean, going back a bit now, I'm trying to remember exactly what it is. It was definitely it was suspension kinematics of some sort. So it was so they do like over that period there was about 4 or 5 different versions of suspension. I mean, part of the reason was they designed the car around the model from 2012 and made already significant jump, but then Pirelli brought the new tire to 2013, which basically, I mean, we haven't got Matt on today, he'd love this, but basically the ply of the tire was different and they'd put a steel belt on compared to a Kevlar belt, and it changed the whole dynamic of the tire. So then that's when Merck did the tire switching and suddenly realized, we figured it out. And like because the ply of the tire actually.
So sorry, I know we've diverted from Monaco, but this is where you would like move a tire from like the rear right to the front left.
Rear right to rear left, yeah, left to right.
Right.
Yeah.
And what would that do? Would it would increase the?
So it basically had an effect on kind of the basically the toe of the tire. So it meant that the kind of properties of the tire, the heating of the tire, was more stable and more consistent. So you could basically run the tire in the optimum for qualifying on the proper ones, so they get the heat for the qualifying. Switch them over, they wouldn't then heat as much because you're actually applying an opposite effect on the toe of the
So toe is if it's standing up, it's either pointing slightly, the top's leaning over inwards or leaning over.
That's camber.
That's camber.
So toe is like pointing basically like that into like which way. So if you toe in, you like your toe.
So it's facing slightly left or facing slightly right if you're front to back, because it's obviously audio. Hello, audio listeners. No, it's fine. And so I was in the stands then in 2013 when we had about 4 or 5 tire blowouts. I thought that was caused by people doing that. So did you start doing that and then other teams copied you, and so basically you caused Tiregate in 2013?
Well, we caused it to be stopped, yeah. Yeah, so I think we figured it out, and we didn't figure it out until Monaco time. And it wouldn't have made a difference for Monaco because of the nature of the circuit, but around that time we figured that out. But then we also noticed that other teams had already been doing that, and then it's but the tire blowouts weren't specifically due to that. I think they would have had, because I think there were some cars who had the blowouts who weren't switching the tires. They were still the kind of construction of that steel belt.
Listen to Mike walking this back. I think might cost Haas a podium at Monaco and caused the famous Tiregate of 2013.
Did win that Silverstone race though.
True, with Rosberg. Rosberg won that one. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Lewis's first win wasn't until Budapest. Though.
Yeah, well, and also, wasn't Vettel in the lead, though, and his engine conked out, and the British crowd was so sympathetic on the start-finish straight.
Yeah, that's because I was back at the factory at that point, and you literally, you know, the TV's usually about 5-10 seconds behind.
Yeah.
You just, someone had keyed up on the intercom, and all you heard was, yeah, this guy just came through the intercom. I was like,
Yeah.
something's going to happen there, and then suddenly cut to the TV to see him stop it.
Yeah, that was me. I was involved in that. And I was saying, oh, such a shame. Unlucky, Seb. Unlucky. So back to Monaco then. I'm glad you brought up the teams kind of shifting around and using one driver. And I wonder if you think you're out of position. So I guess if you think you're up front and you shouldn't be, you close everyone up. But if you've got a fast car, is it ever worth breaking away at Monaco and trying to just build a gap and go?
I guess it depends on how fragile you think the tires are. And I think the one thing you don't ever want to do at Monaco is have to pit into traffic. So you can obviously drive around slowly and keep the tires, but especially this weekend now where there's going to be 2 stops, I think there'll probably be there obviously more chance now that you can just say, well, I know these tires last the full race distance, so I can actually just push them because we've got 2 stops to make anyway. So I'll try to build a gap. So I think potentially if you've got a fast car and free out front, you might well try and do that. But more often than not, you just don't want your tires falling off and having to kind of make a pit stop early or not. But then you can't overtake, so potentially you go up and then you just drop back and then you just sit trundling around 4 seconds off the pace until a gap's opened up or someone stopped behind you.
Thrilling. Well, because I've gone off on one about Monaco Grand Prix is boring. At least just admit it, and then we can treat it in a different way. And I said, the way to watch the Monaco Grand Prix is just turn the volume up. At least the broadcast is good now. They've taken over the broadcast. It looks good on TV, so crack a tin and just enjoy it. We have got this extra element of the softer tyres. We've got the C6 and the 2 stops. So I'm going to just finish by asking you. I'm going to put you as the Ferrari strategist here, because I think Ferrari's interesting because they're going to be, I don't know, P7, P8, maybe P6, something like that, if you had to guess where they're going to qualify. And they've got 2 drivers who will help each other, I think, if they get a chance to. So you've got these 2 stops in your head. What's in your mind? Can we take it on lap 1 and lap 2? Can we save them all to the end? What can we do?
So I think, you're difficult. Yeah, I think the position you put there, the Ferrari, which is 7th, is probably actually going to be the most difficult one to kind of come up with a strategy. If you've kind of, for example, qualified totally out position and one of the Ferraris has crashed out in Q1, for example, then I could quite easily see, I'm going to pit on lap 1 and lap 2. You won't pit on lap 1 and lap 2 if there's no safety car, because you'll basically put yourself in a position where you're going to go a lap down. But I can definitely see someone going, lap 1 pit. I'm going to get one of my pit stops out of the way because I'm not losing. And there obviously is a chance of a safety car coming up at some point in the race. So you can then say, I've got one of my pit stops out of the way. I've got free air. I can catch back up. If another safety car comes out, I pit again, and then I've made my 1 stop. It also forces other teams to go, oh, they've made their stop. How do we now have to cover that? Or do we then try and work it around that we undercut them at the second stop or something? But again, like I said, you've got this safety car issue. If someone pits lap 1 and the safety car comes out lap 3, that team is laughing, because you then potentially, and this is when it potentially comes into play, that another car then goes, oh, I need to support my teammate by pushing this car who's already made his 2 stops back in the field and prevent him from getting and allow my teammates to create a pit stop gap. So I think with Ferrari, I doubt you won't pit on lap 1 if you potentially going to lose 12 places /
I see.
fall behind a competitor who will just push you back. So for example, the Ferrari will then falls behind a Red Bull or a Mercedes who's also out position, and they go, oh, right, we know how to use that car now. We just need to block that Ferrari from creating that gap. And so
if you've got one driver that's pitted, you can use the other one just to fall back and help out the car. So you could see some really interesting strategies coming up here. So yeah, maybe my thinking when they brought the extra stop was it's just going to be a pit stop that changes nothing but twice. I suppose it does give a bit more opportunity to do things.
I mean, the one thing they haven't closed down is the red flag rule. So obviously that still classes as a set of tires. So it almost doesn't change anything. Like for example, if there's a lap on safety car, someone goes in, puts a set of tires on, and then they red flag it after they've come out of the pits. They've then done they've done their 3 sets of tires. So potentially at that point, then they're traveling, and then it's a situation like last year's race. But then there might be some cars to still make their stop. But it's yeah, so that one I kind of feel they should have closed down a little bit, that you had to make 2 pit stops, not just use 3 sets of tires. But the interesting thing, which is that I think I saw the forecast for this weekend, it is potentially a bit changeable, and you still have to use, even if it's fully wet, you still have to use 3 sets of tires. So it's that makes it a very different type of Monaco, because before you could just fit a set of, if it was constantly wet, you could fit a set of inters at the start and pretty much make them last the whole race and have to make no stops because there was no requirement to. But now there is that.
And Mike, I suppose it will be more comfortable for you. I know you complained about being slightly further away from hospitality, but you'll be watching presumably from a yacht this weekend, and it'll be a little more comfortable.
Exactly. Yeah. So I won't have to get up to go and get my drinks.
Mike Caulfield, thanks for joining us, and thanks for giving us a great insight into the Monaco Grand Prix. I think that's the best chat we've had with Mike so far. I mean, that was genuinely like a thrill. He was really open. I've got about 8 notes of things I want to talk about, Kyle.
Yeah, I've got a few. It was interesting. I hadn't actually considered the teammate interference.
No, me neither.
I was thinking more about just solo sort of drivers and what you'd do solo. What I would do. That's a whole different dynamic.
So I think then a first good thing to talk about is which teams do you think would do that? So I'm going to go ahead and say I don't think either McLaren driver is going to hold up the pack for his teammate.
No. Nope. I actually don't think Ferrari will play that game either. I think...
Oh, okay. I disagree.
I don't know. If they're both semi-equal, I'm not sure they'd want to play ball. Oddly, I think Charles would. I don't think Lewis would want to.
I'm not sure.
Oddly.
Okay, so my pre-season prediction was that Hamilton would be a team player in that situation. So I think you're right. If they're like even and fighting each other for the win, then no. But if they're trying to improve and they kind of go, well, Charles could jump up to a podium from 6th here. You're in 8th place, but what we really need you to do is back up the pack. I could see Hamilton doing that.
Oh, if it's obvious the right thing to do, if it was a bit, I wouldn't see them just completely asking one of them to sacrifice. Whereas someone like obviously Red Bull will just sacrifice Yuki. They'll just be like, do whatever it takes. They'll like do whatever. Also Alpine, because Colapinto, he needs to impress the boss. He wants to impress the boss, and he'll be like, he'll just be diving on them. He was like dive on them to protect. Who else? Who else would
surely you're not saying that Briatore would ask a driver to sacrifice his race in order to help his teammate. That's absolutely shocking.
Not on a street circuit either.
You skip past Red Bull a bit. I think Verstappen could be out and they'd still ask Tsunoda to sacrifice his race. Just hold him up anyway. Just hold him up anyway.
Yeah. I mean, I think Red Bull would do that. If they had a chance to spite another team that they didn't like, they would do that probably.
Yeah, so I could see definitely Alpine would be the sort of team to do it. I think they would.
Yeah. Or I don't know, because they've got Ocon
and Behrman.
A known bandit, I think, and Behrman, who's trying to make his mark on the sport. I don't think either driver would agree to that, to be honest.
Yeah, and because it's not been like they've not had a great season. They've had a few weekends where you've gone, oh, they're looking okay. But yeah, if things ramp up between those two, that would be interesting. I think Ocon has fallen out with every teammate he's ever had. Matt's not here, so we can say
it. we can. I mean, I should like Ocon. He comes from we've been sold the story like he's another one, a bit like Lewis, who didn't come from huge wealth, obviously wealth, but not huge wealth. So it should like him, but yeah, he has been a bit of a bandit in his past, and he has proven to not help his teammates whatsoever. So yeah, I don't think he'll play ball there. And Behrman, I think Behrman is kind of trying to stamp his authority all over that team, so I don't think he'd want to play ball either.
You do keep saying Behrman. I think it's definitely Behrman. Behrman, like
is it
bare chest?
Behrman? Okay, sorry,
like
Behrman. I mean, I never mispronounce names on this show ever. I've never mispronounced anyone. Toto.
Toto Wolff. Yeah, so I'd love to see a team do that. Now that I'm like what you said, I had not factored that in to the equation. But when Mike was talking about that tactic specifically messing up his strategy for Kevin Magnussen,
it was Science, wasn't it? Science was the McLaren teammate, I think.
Right. Yeah.
I think so.
Oh man, I really want to see someone do something really clever with these tactics. So yeah, an early pit from one driver, and if you had a 1-2, that's kind of a no-brainer. So if it was Verstappen, Tsunoda 1-2, which sadly I don't think Tsunoda's got his qualifying act together at the moment.
Maybe not. I've actually been really, really, really impressed with Tsunoda, to be honest. On like a little side thing, I think he's done. All things considered, I think he's been okay.
But you're not a fan as such, are you? So I think my expectations, my deluded expectations were high.
Yuki, I'm a realist. I am a fan of Yuki. I like him.
I'm a deranged Tsunoda fan. So like I'm willing to put aside reality.
A fanboy.
Yeah, there was part of me was going, he might go in there and just start like beating Max and also like immediately, not even any kind of gap. Because when you're a fan of someone and you're really hyped for them, you'd want the best for them. So on the one hand, it was like, ooh, that's a poison chalice. But on the other hand, it's like, whoa, championship winning team, you've got that seat. If he's a great driver, then he's going to go and smash it. But the light for me is that his qualifying performances have been disastrous rather than just a bit crap. Do you know what I mean? So he's like, he had that crash, and then and he had the big crash last weekend as well. So it's been these sort of win or bin mistakes rather than a core. Is that what I'm happier with that in a way.
Maybe I'm basing it all on that FP1 in Suzuka. I think, or maybe basing all of it because he amazed me in there, and I just think, well, that's it. It's set. He's done his job. I'm not really maybe paid attention to his failings since then.
He's avoided the Lawson fate for sure, but he needs to now clear the Perez thing. And the thing is, it's only been like 5 races, but at the moment, it's sort of, to me, it feels the same as Perez. Sorry, I know we've diverted.
Yeah, but the Lawson bringing up, that's really good. So the Visa apps, carby things, whatever they're called now, the Raging Bulls.
Yeah,
So that's going to be an interesting one to see whether they all play games and play ball. Because I think Lawson probably would still need to impress his employer. I still don't think his flavour of the month's still there. So I think he still needs to really impress. So I think he'll be happy to sacrifice himself. And Hadjar's been a revelation of the season for me. Like, what amazing. Big fan. Awesome.
Yeah,
so I'd love to see him do well.
But you've got to feel for Lawson. So not really feel for him because... Okay, I'm not going to pretend I feel for him because, he scored like 4 points and then got promoted, did quite badly, disastrously at Red Bull. You could definitely argue he didn't have enough time, but he's come back in and you would hope that he would at least show that his, bit of experience over the last few seasons is enough to be on top of Hadjar. And let's look at all the other drivers that are even experienced in their first season with a new team. We're giving Hamilton a lot of slack. We're giving Sainz a lot of slack, giving them time to catch up. Hadjar hasn't seemed to have needed any of that, and Lawson is still not at Hadjar's level. So it does look bad for. Lawson.
And to be honest, Hadjar with his he was pretty decent in F2 coming through, but I didn't expect him to set the world alight. I think Hadjar's doing a bit of like a Kobayashi, like just kind of getting into F1 and just clicking with it. And just instantly click and you wouldn't have thought he was going to be the revelation of the season. He was. And he suddenly is.
Yeah, he's definitely up there. He's winning the rookie battle this season, isn't he? By whatever definition of rookie you want to use. But I think all of that means that I don't have really high hopes that Tsunoda's going to be right up there with Verstappen in the top 5 and therefore is going to be holding up the pack for Verstappen to do things. But you can just... Oh, go on, carry on.
Oh, no, carry on. I was just about to come in on your point after.
Oh, well, and I was saying, if you look at the McLaren drivers, I can completely see a scenario where we're all screaming at the TV and going, yeah, but if Norris was to do this now, Piastri's going to win. And they won't do it. And they won't. They just won't do it.
No, they won't. They've got the heinous papaya rules or whatever it is, and they seem to just hurt themselves with it. So McLaren seem to love shooting themselves in the foot in the name of fairness.
Yeah, or they're sticking to their principles of fairness. That would be the more generous way of saying it.
Yeah, it's Formula One. Sometimes you got to win, but I do. Yeah, you have to admire that. There is a thing you have to admire that goes. you are hurting yourselves overall as a company in the name of fairness, which you could say is a bit silly, but they're definitely not going to be playing any games unless, again, it's really obvious. Again, as Mike said, unless somebody has a mare in quali and they're completely out of positions, and then you blatantly would. But if not, so that's actually having two drivers on the level footing. You could argue is actually a huge disadvantage this weekend.
Yeah.
You want an uneven team. You want a misbalance, an unbalance in the team, and that's going to give you a massive strategy advantage.
Williams.
That's an interesting one.
That's an interesting one because they've been qualifying really well. They've been running really high. I think both drivers would sacrifice for the other one, for the team. Because Vowles will just tell them. I think Vowles will just tell them and that's it.
I mean, you'd listen to Vowles. Vowles would tell them, but I don't know. Science has been getting a bit frustrated because Science has been doing really, really well, but the races just haven't quite really worked out for him. And Albon's developed some sass. He's getting some right sass to him as well. And I'm just like, oof, I'm not sure they will play ball, actually. Because I think Science is desperate. If Science has a sniff to get some good points on the board, he will want to grab it. And Albon, is a bit sassy. And now Williams are on the up. They're on the ascendancy. I don't think the desperation to sacrifice themselves to get points is there anymore. I think they know they guess, right, we're kind of established point scorers now. I think maybe they've changed from the George. Remember, it was it was Hungary, and it was George sacrificing himself to make sure Latifi got a point, and then almost crying. Or they end up both getting points, but he really hurt himself to make sure Latifi got more points. Those days of Williams are thankfully over, and Williams are on the ascendancy. So I don't think Williams will play ball. Like the drivers will play ball on that.
Okay, so I'm not. I have been guilty of being a little bit anti Albon, just in the fact that I'm not generally a fan. So I don't want to be guilty of. I've seen him come in, so to me, he feels like a younger driver. He's really not that young. I think if Kimi Räikkönen had been making the comments that Alex Albon had been making, I probably wouldn't have been as harsh. But like Alex Albon, he's a full proper grown up, and he's a celebrity, and he's a top level athlete. And he's famous. And so him coming on the radio and being very, very clear with his team that he's unhappy probably shouldn't irk me as much as it has done. And so I sort of want to walk back some of the comments I made on that.
He has been good. He has been absolutely solid, and he is, I think, is well and truly proven himself. He got quite a lot of stick and jip. And then if you look back to what he did when he was in the Red Bull, Verstappen's teammate, I thought he was really unlucky to lose that drive, actually. I don't think he should have done. If you look back, comparatively of what other people did, Albon, I think, did a really good job being parachuted in, like when he was completely not ready. So, yeah, that's valid. I just think, we've seen him kind of not give constructive criticism. I think
it didn't sound constructive, did it? No.
Yeah,
no.
Exactly. Like him losing his cool and having some Alonso type sort of jibes at the team over the radio and getting really frustrated. So, I don't know. It's when that... I mean, you can never criticize a driver fully for in the heat of the moment when they're in the car, they're under G's and stuff like that, and they can get it. But there is definitely a bit of like really, really, there's angst there. There's a little bit of angst there. I can detect. So I'm not sure he'll want to play ball.
So I disagree. I think the Williams drivers will do it ultimately if they're ordered to. But do you remember last year when Leclerc won Monaco? Was that last season? I haven't lost track of time here.
Yeah, it was last year because he finally did it,
He finally did it, and we'll talk about why he didn't do it in a previous year in a moment. But Sainz was so desperately trying to involve himself in that race. So like Leclerc was going to win that, whatever Sainz did, but he kept going, oh, well, what if I... hold up this. What if I, push Lewis Hamilton into the lake and into a yacht? What if I smoke a cigar? Will that help? Will that help Leclerc? And then he ran over. If you watch the footage after the race, he ran over to try and be a part of the celebration with Leclerc. And I can't remember who it was, but somebody physically stopped him and said, don't make... Yeah, it was almost like, we heard what you were doing on the radio. Don't make it about you. That was my read.
Okay, so almost like main character syndrome. But also, he knew his contract was up at the end of the year. So I think he was probably trying to steal himself as this amazing team player, probably to say, keep me. So there's probably a bit of that to it.
I'm going to try and rewatch this at some point to check my memory isn't playing tricks on me. But I do remember this tone of like, wow, you're really trying to be a part of this. Whereas I don't think it didn't strike me as genuine. It struck me as quite forced. That was all.
He could just be a very nice chap and wanted to celebrate in the team finally and do that. I mean, I'd like to go along with that.
Do you
Actually,
know,
he's just a very nice chap.
well, obviously, we're both friends with Alex Van Gien, and he will always see the best in people. And he's like my marker. So Alex would definitely go, no, Sainz was just being really nice. Whereas I'll do the cynical thing of, oh, I see what he was trying to get out of that situation. That's a character flaw. That's on me. I'm just saying that's how I read it. Maria in the live patron chat is saying, come on, don't be cynical. I don't think I can not be. But I think Sainz will do it. I think Sainz definitely likes being the team player. The whole thing of when he was out in one of the races and he jumped on the pit wall and helped with the strategy call for Albon. He made some kind of... Did you catch that one a few races back?
I think so.
He retired, and then he was the one saying, no, you've got to pit now. Oh, he loved it. He loved that being part of that. And
maybe we are being overly cynical then. Maybe we are being overly cynical. Talk a bit overly cynical and a bit snarky. Aston.
Here we go.
Yeah. Would Mr. Alonso, the self-proclaimed unluckiest driver in the history of Formula One, good grief, would you think him and the potential world champion protege, son of team owner Lance, how do you think they'll play that?
Yeah.
Would they sacrifice Lance? They surely wouldn't dare ask Alonso to sacrifice himself.
I think Alonso likes the reputation that he's looking out for Stroll and he's mentoring him. So I think he would take it. If you said to him, look, actually, I know it's not going your way, but if you hold up this pack, Stroll's going to get a podium. I think he's all over that. I think he jumps all over it.
Actually, you could be right, because remember when he got in the first thing, he was like, "We're all happy families." Remember to tell Stroll about the brake balance trick and stuff like that. He's trying to nurture him. So maybe, but I don't know. It'd be interesting because actually Stroll has not been that far off Alonso at all. Let's look at the actual performances in Lapton. He's not been that far off him at all. I think they might be very, very close together.
Alonso has 0% of Aston Martin's points this season.
But it's because it's the unluckiest driver in history.
Nothing goes his way. So here's a bit of a broader point. Some of the drivers play to the camera and play to the broadcast, and they're hyper aware. So I don't get that impression with Albon. I actually do think Albon's pretty genuine, heart on his sleeve. Don't get that impression with Hamilton as well. I think he's in the moment. He might be like aware, be careful because it's going to be on TV. But some of the drivers really play to the camera, like a soccer goalkeeper who, when the ball is like, it's to the side, but it's at waist height, it's a nice height, and then they catch it and do a tumble over, and then they start shouting at their defense. Schmeichel. Both of them, the Schmeichels did that. So you say Alonso is one. He is aware of his profile. Who
could forget the pit lane dive when someone come out in front of him and he's like wrestling his wheel?
He's like soaring at the wheel, like, oh my God, we nearly died.
Yeah,
So he does that.
Fantastic.
Russell does that. Russell 100% is playing to the broadcast.
Oh, Mercedes. We haven't spoken about Mercedes, have we?
Okay. Oh yeah, Russell. So would they? I don't think it would sit right with Russell. I'm skeptical that Russell would do that. I think blocking.
I think he would. I actually think he would. Like completely opposite. I actually think Russell would, and Antonelli, because I think Russell's getting a bit worried. There's a Verstappen maybe around of Mercedes again. I think Russell would fully commit himself. I mean, if they asked him to, I'm pretty sure he'd have a Mercedes sign tattooed onto his forehead if it meant the thing. If it meant he sort of keeps his drive, I think Russell would sacrifice himself for the team there. And Kimi seems like a very nice lad, and I think Kimi would do it as well. So yeah, I think Mercedes will full on go out to help each other if they can.
Do you think it's more harmonious at Mercedes now? I'm not trying to do down Hamilton in any way, but that obviously a little bit of resentment had built up after 3 unsuccessful years.
Yeah, and the pressure's off a little bit. Well, pressure's off, but not off as in it's a less pressure environment. You've got a rookie Kimi's there who's not expected to beat Russell. Russell now is feeling more comfortable within himself as like the team leader. He feels that Mercedes have got faith in him. He's not trying to prove himself anymore. I think he's slipped into his de facto lead driver role quite nicely, and the first few races have really kind of played out that way as well. So yeah, I think you're right. It is more harmonious, but I think just purely because of the situation, you've got a rookie in there. Like I think maybe later on in the season, if Kimi starts to do really well and start to really challenge Russell, it'll become less harmonious naturally. But at the moment, I think it's happy families.
Kyle, I think I've made the mistake again.
Oh, mistake.
We're building up this as if there's going to be some amazing tactics and stuff going on. What have I done?
Oh God, it's like the national lottery. It's like a tax on hope.
Right. Okay. So, right, nothing gives you away as a bit of a posh kid more than saying that the lottery is a tax on stupidity, because you've
Right.
nailed it, Kyle. It's not. It's a tax on hope. So
Yeah.
when posh kids, oh, it's a tax on
I thought you
stupidity.
were going to call me a posh kid then.
No,
I'm
no,
just
no,
like,
no,
what?
no, no, no,
What?
no. I know you well enough. I know, but when posh kids go, oh, it's a tax on stupidity, it's like, no, you don't know. You don't know what it's like to have like no future and nothing ahead of you. You buy that ticket, and you buy it from the furthest away point that you can, and in that whole time, you're holding in
Yeah.
your hand like a potential like escape. I'm glad you said that. Yeah, it's a tax on hope. The
Yeah,
Monaco
indeed.
Grand Prix is a tax on hope. Oh dear.
But I know I genuinely think it's going to be exciting. I actually cannot wait because I love these strategies. And Mike made a really good point as well, and point out which is another thing I hadn't like thought about. Wets, wets having multiple stops with the wet
Yeah,
tires as well,
yeah.
and like the inters, and you can run a full wet down to pretty much into a slick because you can almost. It's impossible to overtake us, particularly with this new generation of crud panzer sort of cars. It's just absolutely impossible to get around. So that's absolutely fascinating. And I had another little sort of like strategy, sort of like potential
Yeah.
that you're kind of looking for gaps in the field to open up. If you're the leader, you would go intentionally slow to make sure no gaps in the field do open up, and then that's going to leave a wide open door for a midfield team like an Alpine or a Haas to try the two consecutive lap stops. So it's going to be crucial on Friday if they figure out the hard tire can go the distance, that maybe lap 3 or 4, just so you don't lose the lap, and then do a double stop.
Remember, the hard tire is now the C4, the medium is the C5, and the
Right.
C6 is the soft. So it's not like going on the hard tire last year. So you're hoping that last year's medium can go the race distance minus 2 laps.
Yeah, and
That might
actually
be a
with that
stretch.
strategy, you would have to push
And you'd
somewhat
have to
'cause you
push,
want to
you'd have
catch
to
up
push,
to
yeah,
the
yeah,
back
yeah.
of the pack. But then if there is a safety, and then safety cars are a massive curveball as well. And so surely if there is a safety car, everyone will take that. Like everyone will take it, and the pit lane will just be chaos.
Yeah, so I'm trying to figure this out for that tactic to work. So this is what I meant to say this to Mike, but I didn't get to it. Is that the gap? If someone holds up the pack, then the only teams with a gap are, like you say, the midfield, lower midfield teams. They've got a gap to pit into, and then clean air to go and push. That relies on the front cars going slow. If the front cars are stretching it out, then that tactic doesn't work.
No, it doesn't. But it depends who the front car is. So I think if it's a Verstappen, will get out the front,
Yeah.
will try to sprint and try and go away. If the McLarens will try to sprint and go away. But if something like, well, you have to put your money on Leclerc. He is good at pulling out a banzai lap in a Ferrari, which probably is not going to have the race pace. Then they will maybe try to hold it up or try to play clever. I mean, Ferrari strategists, you never know. Like they might not.
You
they
mean
might not-
Ferrari strategist like new friend of the show, Francesco Campello, who gave us the fascinating insights into how you might remove all cooling to concentrate on quali pace. So I'm assuming that you'll basically see no cooling on any of the cars because they all want to get the
They're
maximum
going to get the
pace.
gaffer tape out
Yeah,
and just
just
tape
like-
up all of the
yeah.
cooling ducts.
Yeah, so behind you just see like gaffer tape on it. So I did say we talk about the Leclerc thing from a couple of years ago, where he was just going like full on win or bin. He had the highest or the fastest lap time. He was in provisional pole, and then he went through the swimming pool complex, and he was just pushing, and he ended up hitting the wall. So nothing to lose. You're already in pole. Yellow flags come out. He keeps the pole. Do you remember that one? Yeah.
We debated quite a
Yeah.
lot whether that was an intentional crash or not. And I think who was it saying in our group? Who was
Yeah.
it? Was it you? Who was like he did that intentionally? And I was like, no way, because he crashed
Well,
way
no,
too hard.
I think my thing was there was nothing to lose because you're already like you can either get a faster lap or you hit the wall and cause a yellow flag and then you're pole anyway.
Yeah, because didn't he do the classic swimming pool trick of hitting the inside
He
apex,
hit the
breaking the
inside.
track rod, and then just going straight onto the barrier on the outside? It's like I think he may have done that, like Verstappen in 2018, like loads of people we've seen doing it. It's a classic.
Stroll did it.
Classic.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. If he did intend to crash, or if he's throwing like if he was just throwing it like full bananas and just absolutely going for it, then you have to say it's a bit silly because what was at stake is a gearbox, and you
Yeah.
know if you change a gearbox, you're losing your pole.
I think, don't you
So
normally
surely
think that
why
you're
jeopardize it?
gonna hit a wing or the front suspension? It was quite unlucky the way he went in and hit the gearbox. But the real tactical error was then not taking the new gearbox. So they gambled everything because a new gearbox is 5 grid penalty, and and the gearbox basically failed on the outlap.
It was a sighting lap to the grid.
Sighting lap
He
to the grid,
instantly
yeah.
felt it, but they checked it, and they did all check it. But to be honest, if you start fifth at Monaco, you know,
You're gonna
all
finish
things
fifth.
sort of thing. You've got, so to be honest, they knew that they knew they just had to go for it. They put
Yeah.
all their eggs in one basket. It goes, we're just going to take a massive. They said they do it was calculated. I don't think it was. I just think they just took a huge gamble and said, look, if this comes off, we're going to win Monaco. If it doesn't, we were probably going to be fifth or thereabouts anyway. I think they made a conscious team decision. It goes, let's just gamble. Let's go for it.
Because you can lose a couple of gears. So let's say that gearbox was just stopping you.
Yeah.
I don't know. You had to skip fourth or whatever. Like they just had seen Ricardo lose his MGU
H. Okay, yeah. I think it was a whole ERS system. So he lost I think he lost everything. I think it was like 300 brake horsepower down.
So Mike was saying, he was running around like 6-7 laps slower, and Horner came on going, oh, it was a magnificent defense. It's like, no, you just can go that slowly and not lose the pace.
But it's not absolutely impossible to pass. Remember in 2015, the Verstappen amazing pass fest, and he was passing left, right, centre before he absolutely pile drive into Grosjean going into Saint-Denis.
Was he a lap down when he was doing all that though? Had he already been
No,
lapped?
what he was doing, well, yes, he was. He was following the leaders
yes,
through.
That was it.
The leaders were
lapping. Yeah.
To be fair, it was genius. It was brilliant. And I remember getting really excited about it and just being like, oh my God, like, yeah, this kid's amazing. And then whack into Saint-Denis.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think, sorry, I've taken more time of yours than I asked for, Kyle, and I know you've got a dinner waiting for you, but I would like to talk about some more Monaco moments, if that's okay.
Yeah, let's do it.
So the people are already mentioning Schumacher, so I wanted to talk about some of the cheats.
2006.
Some of the out-and-out cheats, and I chickened out of asking Mike Caulfield about the Rosberg soaring at the wheel thing and the fake lockup, because he will have known, he'll have looked at that data. And I just didn't want to put him in that position on the podcast to confirm it. But that was nearly as bad as the Schumacher one. At the time, I don't know if you remember, at the time, it was split. Like, people hated Hamilton enough to go, no, that was accidental.
Including Brundle, including Martin Brundle in the comms. Remember that? He was like, no. And then later in the season, he actually U-turned. He was like, you know what? The more I look at it,
Right,
the more I'm convinced he did that on purpose.
So here, Brad, straight away, he went, no, I know how you do that. And the only reason to soar at the wheel well on the brakes on that straight was not to save it. It was to create an imbalance and create a lockup.
And this is what I said. This is what it is without doubt. It is black and white. It is without doubt. You see him soaring on the way down into Mirabeau, which is off camber. There's a big lump, and you're unloading the inside wheel. Anyway, the only way to induce an inside wheel lockup is to soar at the wheel. He just exasperated the issue, and he fully wanted to lock the inside wheel. It was so obvious to me. I was screaming at the TV when that happened. I was like, look, he's soaring at the wheel. How do the FIA let him off? Because he's soaring.
That's not the worst bit. That's not the worst bit. So obviously he's done this because he's up. He's in P1 provisional pole. I don't know I think Hamilton was on a faster first section. But in any case, he did that, locked up, went into the runoff area, no yellow flag. So what did he do? He then put it in reverse and went backwards to really be a danger. And then there was a yellow flag, no penalty. Completely got away with that, by the way.
Yeah, it was but the reversing was always similar to the Schumacher one back in 2006.
Yeah.
Now this one hurts me as well because
you're a big fan.
Yeah, I'm a massive Schumacher fan. And yeah, it was pretty obvious he suddenly become Maureen from driving school and the worst driver in the world at the La Rascasse, and he soared at the wheel and then just straightened up and then was struggling to get reverse, and it was a bit comical really, the whole act. But again, I think there was a lot of resentment for Schumacher as well back then as well, and they wanted a bit of change, and they wanted a bit like kind of liking it a bit like to 2021. There was like a challenger for him.
Yep.
And stuff like this.
Oh, no.
And he was coming back.
Schumacher was ruining F1 in the same way that Hamilton was ruining F1.
To be fair, he had lost the championship in 2005, but then Ferrari on the ascendancy again, and I think a lot of people
Oh no,
were like,
not
"Oh no,
again.
we don't want this to
Yeah.
happen again," and they threw the book at him. They absolutely threw the book at him. But again, it was pretty obvious, Schumacher thing. But I think the Rosberg one was just as obvious, if
It
not more
was though.
obvious. It was just as obvious.
Okay, I mean, look, he was up against Hamilton, and obviously, I just think, there's. I think Hamilton is one of the people who's attracted the most like hate from fans and stuff. And I honestly think people were either out and out lying and were going online being like, "Oh no, it was definitely an accident. Like he didn't rob Hamilton of pole," and some people were deluding themselves into it. But yeah, I think that's part of the reason that there was a split jury on that at the time. But like certain votes to leave massive trading blocks on our doorstep, you can't find the people now. You can't find the people now who think that it was a genuine accident. But I think it happens way more often than you think. So yeah, people were skeptical when I was saying that about Rosberg, and obviously I think the Leclerc one, I'm not
Do they have
dying.
a rule now? Don't they have a rule now at Monaco? Are they putting in a rule? Because I know in IndyCar there's a rule,
Yeah,
isn't there?
I
Like
don't
you
think there
lose
is.
your fastest lap
Yeah.
if you cause a yellow flag or
Might
something
be.
in
I
the final
don't
bit.
think that rule has come in F1. But chat,
Because
just correct us if we're wrong.
yeah, but the really clever thing to do would not be to park it, would be to have just a little pathetic front ender crash, actually damage your car, and then you
Yeah.
could argue, well,
Just the
why
nose
would I
cone.
damage my
Yeah,
car?
just the
But
nose
yeah,
cone,
exactly,
go
but
straight
not
in,
the
yeah.
gearbox. Do not do it in the swimming pool because that's a guaranteed gearbox change, pretty much. Like, do not do it there. I don't know. Yeah, turn in too early at the Rascasse. Just clip and take your right front, knock your right front corner off. Do
What
that.
about the Perez one in 2022? And that was coming out the famous hairpin.
Portier. It was going Portier into the
onto
tunnel.
the seafront. Yeah.
Yeah, that was it. Oh, I forgot about that.
Yeah.
That was even worse than Rosberg's because the natural reaction, and he premeditated and thought about this, and I think this is actually impressive execution because with
I'm looking up now.
with Perez, your natural instinct as a racing driver is to steer into the slide. And it almost happens by instinct.
Yeah.
You have to be really thinking of, I want to spin round to not steer into, override your natural instinct. And Perez managed to override his natural instinct and not. And if you look at his onboard, he doesn't steer into the slide.
Yeah. He just lets it go. I can see that. There's no correction.
Yeah,
There's no correction at all. I'm watching.
So that's the dead giveaway.
And
Because
Verstappen was furious about that as well, to the point that he then wouldn't help Perez out in Brazil later in the year.
Absolutely, absolutely, and Perez full on did it, but it wasn't even for pole, wasn't it? For like just ahead of Verstappen.
It was to make sure, it was to be ahead of Verstappen. At that time.
That's a pretty Dick Dastardly sort of dirty move. That just because it's not even for pole position. If it was for pole position, you'd be like, okay, I kind of understand, but to override your natural instinct, well, that's quite impressive.
But again,
actually.
he went rear in. That's the only kind of was it? Because he went in rear. Like he went in gearbox, like you said, he went in gearbox first.
Yeah, you never want to go in gearbox. So that's a whole different sort of show. Like, how would you crash effectively without ruining your gearbox at Monaco?
You're right. Just front end in. You go, locked up. You've got to induce a lock up at some point, and then just go front end in.
Yeah.
Bottas did it as well, by the way. Bottas got a pole. I need to remember what it was.
Was it Austria? Austria throw it off into the gravel?
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Maybe, but there was definitely one where Bottas was in provisional pole and then had this like innocuous off where he just seemed to drive off on purpose.
Oh no, wasn't that when both Mercedes went off? I remember both Mercedes went off on their flying laps in I think it was Austria, but I think Bottas ended up with the pole position and his one was a bit like, that was a bit odd. He just ran a bit too conveniently wide and into the gravel there.
So the one you mentioned before that I want to talk about, because I'm aware of the time here, is the Panis race. So you mentioned Paris 1996, and I rewatched a bunch of highlight clips about it. My memory has betrayed me on that. I thought 6 cars finished. It was
3. There was only 3 on the road.
3 cars finished on the road.
Actually, 5 were classified in the end. So it wasn't the least amount of cars ever to finish, which I can't remember which Grand Prix it was. Maybe something in the 80s in the turbo era. But 5 were actually classified.
So only 3 finished. So it was Panis who won the race. I think it was Coulthard.
Oh, yeah. Coulthard wearing Schumacher's helmet. Wearing Michael Schumacher's helmet, which is really cool. He had massive fogging up in his helmet and he had loads of problems. So, because he was actually great mates with Michael Schumacher. Like they were actually really, really good mates. which puts more poignancy on the 98 "You Tried to Kill Me," when Schumacher went to the back of
Yeah,
him at Spa and stormed down the pit lane. Like, Coulthard and Schumacher were great mates, and they both were Schubert helmets, I believe. So it was a sponsorship thing, and so Schumacher lent him one of his spare helmets, and it's really cool. If you look at the images, it's Coulthard wearing Michael Schumacher's helmet.
Oh, I feel like that would have stood out in my head more that he wasn't wearing the St
It
Andrew's
doesn't.
cross.
It's a little known fact, really. Yeah, it's a little known
I
fact,
wanna
but
look
it was
back on
it's
that
clearly
now.
Schumacher's helmet.
So it was Herbert as well. I thought it was
All
another
right.
Brit. So it was Panis, Coulthard, Herbert who crossed the line, and I guess Frentzen and Salo were also classified as no.
Uh,
Oh no,
I
Salo's
think
5 laps down.
yeah, there was. I can't remember
It's
how the
7. It's
rules.
7 classified, I think.
I was at 7
Yeah,
classified,
and
but
also
I know one of them.
Hakkinen 5 laps down and Irvine 7 laps down. But
Right.
Irvine didn't finish. Irvine got punted off by Panis.
By Panis in the hairpin.
Yeah.
I remember that and that was on board. I remember it was at the time. Like, I was mad how much you remember, because I haven't watched this race back for years.
I watched
I've
it
got
back
it. I
today.
think I've got the
Yeah.
full race actually on my hard drive. I haven't watched it back for years. I think I remember it was on the nose cone camera. I think at the time you just see his tire lock up and then just stop, and it was like then it comes like the thing and it's been shoved in the wall.
But that's the thing I was saying. Oh, they don't race like that anymore. Like Panis just fully punted him off, and then there was a 3-car pile-up at the end. Ah, yes. So there was a 3-car pile-up after that hairpin before. What's the right-hander that we just said? Where Perez
Portier.
So before Portier, it was Salo and Hakkinen, and I think Frentzen. I think that was a 3-car
right.
pile-up. Yeah. Out of that.
Well,
yeah.
I know one of them was they finished. They were so many laps down. The person behind them was so many laps behind them. So they did just pull the car in for the last 2 laps. So there's no point. We're going to be classified in this position. So they did just park it.
Yeah.
I can't remember who it was, but I know somebody intentionally parked it.
The funny thing about that race is, even though there was some weather, it wasn't like one big pile-up. It was like this slow drumbeat of mechanical failures. Verstappen hit the wall, and then a few engines
the biggie,
died.
Schumacher, because the qualifying lap on the Saturday with Schumacher in his first season in a Ferrari was something else. If you watch that online, it was him wrestling that car. Watch it, it's incredible. Like, absolutely amazing, his quali lap. He dragged that Ferrari, which was, look at it, it was a horrific car. It even looked weird compared to everything else. It was an awful car. He dragged it to pole, but then he made a really bad start, and then the most un-Schumacher mistake ever, binned it on the first lap.
Yeah.
He put it in the wall really hard. He binned it. Yeah.
Yeah, he didn't do that a great deal, but I also think that Kyle is as deluded a Schumacher fan as those people who said that the Suzuka pole from Verstappen was a miracle lap in a tractor.
No,
So you can't try. He's an unreliable witness. That was a rocket ship. No, it wasn't. No, it wasn't. And so Panis won in a Ligier as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it sounds amazing because I think it was a Mugen Honda, or was it Yamaha V10? I remember, I just remember the because it was on Murray's Magic. No, it wasn't Murray's Magic Moments video. Maybe it was. I remember him going pop, pop, pop on the throttle, and it just sounded amazing and really aggressive, and he was still pushing really hard at the end. The engine sounded amazing coming through. Anthony Noakes. What's the final corner called now? Or was it called? Yeah, it was Anthony Noakes, isn't it? I think. I can't remember what it was called, but yeah, coming through there and it just sounding absolutely incredible, and only 3 on, and just what a great story, because it was crazy. And weren't they running the Bridgestone tires back then? I think maybe as well. I don't know. I remember it being an incredible
special
result.
Schumacher tyres made especially for Michael Schumacher.
He was on Goodyears. He was on Ferrari.
Whatever, Kyle. I'm not listening to any more of this propaganda. Has this show been derailed more or less than last week's preview with me, Matt, and with me and Chris Stevens and Matt? Right, I think we should get to some predictions. Should we put our reputations on the line here? I am absolutely going for, just because he's been so phenomenal in Q3 all season, it's going to be Verstappen or Piastri for this one. Based on qualifying form, because Norris just cannot seem to string together a Q3, so I'm not holding up any hopes at all. But I think it's Verstappen. I think Verstappen there's a drumbeat of inevitability about this phase of the season, and I feel like he can string together his Q3 lap and then just hold it.
Wow. Okay, I'm going to disagree with you, because I think they still have an inherent understeer problem in the Red Bull. It doesn't rotate well at low speed unless they can get some sort of crazy setup on it to make it rotate well. I think Verstappen's actually going to struggle a bit. I actually think he'll struggle a bit, and I don't think even Verstappen can outdrive the car here a little bit. I know you hate that sort of saying when he outperforms the car, but I think he has been dragging it a little bit this year, and I think Verstappen has without Verstappen in that car, I don't think Red Bull will be anywhere this season. Basically, so I think he's been maximising a very difficult car, and I don't think he's got the chance to do that this weekend. So I think you're right with Piastri. I think it's Piastri clearly.
Yep.
I think that's where my money would be on. Then it's going to be the tactics, but oh no, I've got spider sensey tingle. I think there's going to be a safety car, some controversy, and some skullduggery team tactics. And I think someone like a Ferrari, like a Leclerc, maybe a Lewis, or maybe even an Alpine with tactics can come in and have a shock result.
I know you're not the biggest Hamilton fan, but
I am. I'm a realist. I am not afraid to say it as I see it and call him out. I'm not one of these who he can do no wrong. I'm a massive Lewis fan. I followed his whole career. I've always supported him, but also I'm a very much realist with it, and I'm happy to call him out when he needs to be called out. And unfortunately, the last couple of years, I've had to call him out more than I've had to praise him.
Yeah, I had to do it in the. I don't think it was a great weekend last weekend, and I've had loads of stuff from like Hamfosi.
Oh, you're a Hamilton hater now.
Yeah, I'm a Hamilton hater. I've had people like accusing me of pretending to be a Hamilton fan just so I can hate on him. It's like no, it's like I know it's a good result, but also like that the chips fell his way. You've got to be really good to take advantage of the chips falling your way, but the chips fell your way.
What was encouraging was he got fighty. He was looking racy, and it seemed to work. And he needed that because I did call it at the start of the season. I did say I think this season is going to be a not spectacular disappointment, but spectacularly mediocre, if you know what I mean, and going to be a bit of a struggle. And it's
Kyle, I know what I'm about to say is wrong, so feel free to judge me. When he was chasing down Antonelli, I know he never got past him in that first stint. I swear that his helmet was a couple of inches forward, more forward than normal. Like he was lent in. Like, you know, when you lock in a kart race and you're like almost like gripping the wheel.
Yeah, Van Gien does it all the time. See, Alex said,
like head down because you're really going for it. And in go-karts as well, the aerodynamics, like people do literally duck their heads down. Yeah. I swear to you, at Imola, Hamilton's head was tucked in and tucked down, and he was locked in. That's the big takeaway I'm taking from it. But obviously, you're locked in with the VSC as well.
I mean, he lucked into to a certain extent, but he was fighty and brave enough to start putting the moves on and do that. Whereas before, we see him, particularly in his last sort of year or two at Merck, we criticised him loads, and I think I was going mad in the group chat just saying he was way too soft. He's risk averse. It seemed like he'd lost the spark and the desire to push hard.
I definitely saw a spark. I definitely saw a spark in the body language in the car.
Yeah,
even though the pace wasn't quite, whatever.
And I think he needed that. So
my bar is higher for Hamilton. My bar is higher for Tsunoda. I can't apologise for that.
My bar used to be high for Hamilton, but now he's on the turn. I think he's on the turn. There's no spring chicken anymore. It's my age. I feel on the turn.
So how old are you, Kyle?
I'm almost 40.
Oh my God, that's so disgusting. Like you were that breed of like young, exciting karters at the beginning of the Mr. Apex project, and now you're all just middle-aged losers. Oh my God.
Yeah. Unfortunately. So I know how Lewis feels, and stuff like that, and it's, and the youth. And when I stopped karting and racing competitively and stuff like that, I knew it when I was getting 18-year-olds come up. I mean, I started really late. I didn't start until I was 27, and then I was getting beaten by 18-year-olds, and I was like, Mate, what?
That's why I quit. Do you know why I quit football? It was at the league I was playing in. I think they had to be 18. And so these 18-year-olds would come in, and every single year, the 18-year-olds were bigger, stronger, hit harder, they were faster. I'm like, where are they making these 18-year-olds? This is crazy. And I think I got to like 36, 37. I went, I can't keep up with these guys anymore. Kyle, so Maria's saying Russell for P1. It could be one of these like back of the front, top end midfield, great qualifiers that pops up and gets a result.
Yeah, that's not a bad shout, actually. That's not a bad shout. Because, look, Mercedes have been looking pretty good this year, but their upgrade at Imola, they seem to look really good one-lap pace, but then they kind of fell away in the race. Russell
you don't need race
was
pace.
Broken on the car, and they're getting this mystery which has plagued them for the last couple of years, isn't it? They're like, what's happened to the car? Like, we started off really well and just got slower throughout the weekend. That's not a bad shout, but yeah, I think this is like wide open goal for... Yeah, lower top 10 sort of midfield and some sort of
for a win. I think we are talking about the top 4 teams though.
Probably,
yeah. So we're talking about qualifying is the win. Let's assume that we're talking about that qualifying is the win. Then it's not going to be. I don't think it's going to be Tsunoda. I don't think it's going to be Norris. the one lap qualifying pace, I think Leclerc is more comfortable than Hamilton at the moment. So it's either going to be Piastri, Hamilton. Piastri. Look at my hope. Leclerc, Piastri, Verstappen, or Russell. That'll be. Oh, mind you, Antonelli got that sprint pole as well. One of five.
And he is rapid. That's the thing. And Antonelli is young, and I don't think he's not afraid to crash. I think Antonelli could actually. He's a bit like Leclerc, I think, and they call this in. I'm going to get my MotoGP reference in. They call this in MotoGP. Take your brain out laps. They'll just like bite the screen. They call it screen bite. You go and just bite the screen. Just bite the screen. Take your brain out and just put it all on the line. Just remove your brain and go for it. And I think Leclerc and Antonelli are drivers who will just take their brain out and just go do whatever it takes to get pole. He'll be like sliding up against the walls. It could end in disaster. It could be genius. Flip a coin. Who knows?
No, I mean we've both done sport. We both like our poker. Not to tell too many tales. We both like a gamble. So there are times in life and in sport where you have to go all in. You have got those moments where you go, right, win or win. You know, like you're 40 love down on your service game. You just go, do you know what? I'm just bringing out the big guns. If we're going down, let's go down swinging. So it's Jon Snow pulling out his sword with the hordes in the Battle of the Bastards. I can say that because it's the title of a creative piece of television, with the horses charging towards him. Yeah, I think somebody's got to do that. It's just got to absolutely go for it. Go and follow Kyle. Yeah. Go follow Kyle at Kyle Power F1 on X and on Blue Sky. Go and follow Missed Apex Moto GP. Find that on iTunes and on your podcatcher of choice. And there is a video version, so you can go and see their faces, and you can decide who's the best looking regular crew, the Missed Apex F1 or the Missed Apex Moto GP or the Missed Apex Formula E.
There's that as well. Other podcasts are available. There's please come and hang out in the YouTube and do some comments. We've had some great sort of comments and some interaction in there. We're starting to get some regulars come up there now. So yeah, good. Maybe we'll think about maybe next season. Maybe I don't know. It'd be cool to have some live chat doing it when we do it. But to have live chat, we'd have to have a live show, wouldn't we?
Once you break 1,000, all things are possible. You've hit the magic marker now. And people will start telling their friends, and you're going to become the most famous MotoGP content creator on the planet. Kyle Power, thanks for joining me. Remember to follow me. Spanner's ready on stuff, and I'm the best one. You should follow me, even if he's doing well. But also, patreon.com/MissedApex. Thank you so much to the people who continue to support us, but also welcome to our new patrons. It has been a fantastic week for patrons in Missed Apex. I'm very, very excited. It unlocks possibilities for us. Missed Apex podcast, patreon.com/Missed Apex. I beg your pardon. If you want to consider doing that, that would be great. We'll see you around 8 p.m. for the Monaco Grand Prix race review. Until we see you next, work hard, be kind, and have fun. This was Missed Apex podcast. That was a rubbish outro, Kyle. I think I'm as hungry as you are. And I ate 3 meals today. Go and eat food.
Yeah, need to go. I did have a protein shake.
Oh, that's
literally
not enough.
Just before we went live.
It's 10 p.m. I'm not your dad or anything, but go and eat some food, Kyle.